The word wife hangs in the air between you. He's not exactly being subtle about his intentions. Throughout dinner, you notice Edward drinks heavily, 4 glasses of wine plus brandy afterward. A warning sign, perhaps, but Victorian women have no right to object to male vices. That's just part of being a man. After dinner, the women withdraw to the drawing room, while the men remain for cigars and more alcohol. Another rigid gender separation. In the drawing room, Mrs. Blackwood interrogates you thinly disguised as pleasant conversation. "Do you enjoy household management, Miss Harrison? Florence tells me you keep an excellent linen inventory. Thrilling. Your skill with counting sheets has been noted. I find great satisfaction in maintaining an orderly household, ma'am. More acceptable lies. The stakes are too high for honesty." When the men eventually join you, Edward immediately requests your musical performance. You take your place at the piano, corset digging into your ribs, making each breath a shallow gasp. The piece you play is pretty but simple, demonstrating just enough skill to be accomplished without threatening male egos. Edward watches you with that same calculating gaze. You're not a person to him. You're a potential possession, a decorative asset, a womb for his future heirs, a symbol of his status. After your performance, he approaches. "You play charmingly, Miss Harrison." "You're too kind, sir." "Not at all. A touch of music makes a house a home, don't you agree? My mother always played in the evenings for my father." The subtext is clear. This is what I expect from a wife. The evening continues with cards and tea, more stilted conversation, more subtle evaluation. Edward seems particularly interested in your family connections and your mother's health, calculating your social value and how long before you might inherit anything. When the Blackwoods finally depart, Edward takes your hand. His grip is slightly too tight, his thumb brushing across your knuckles in a way that makes your skin crawl. "I've greatly enjoyed this evening, Miss Harrison. I hope to see more of you. With a single signature, you legally cease to exist as your own person. Your body, your property, your earnings, all belong to your husband. That's the reality waiting if Edward Blackwood proposes." And based on your parents' excited whispers after the Blackwoods leave, that's exactly what they're hoping for. "He seemed quite taken with you," your mother says as Martha helps you undress. Mrs. Blackwood hinted he's been looking to settle down. His house on Grosvenor Square needs a mistress. The corset comes off and you gasp as blood flow returns to your compressed torso. Red marks from the stays will take hours to fade. "Did you notice how he asked about your musical education? A clear sign of interest," your mother continues, oblivious to your discomfort, "and inquiring about your reading habits. Very promising." You say nothing. What can you say? That Edward Blackwood's eyes made you feel like merchandise, that his touch made your skin crawl, that the thought of being legally bound to him makes you want to run screaming into the night. Victorian daughters don't get to choose based on such trivial matters as personal comfort or compatibility. They accept the matches their parents arrange. They smile and say yes and surrender their entire existence to men who see them as property. Lying in bed that night, you think about what marriage to Edward Blackwood would mean. Your modern brain understands the legal reality in ways your Victorian counterpart can't fully grasp. Under the doctrine of coverture, a married woman in 1860 England has no legal existence. Her husband absorbs her legal personhood completely. She cannot own property, cannot keep her own wages if she works, cannot make contracts, cannot sue or be sued, cannot even refuse her husband's sexual demands. Marital rape won't be recognised as a crime for another century. The bedroom door closes and you realise you have no right to refuse anything. If Edward gambles away your family money, you have no recourse. If he takes a mistress, you must pretend not to notice. If he beats you, the law offers little protection unless he causes permanent injury. And even then, the scandal would likely be considered worse than the abuse. The bruises hidden beneath layers of clothing tell the story society refuses to hear. Of course, not all Victorian marriages were nightmares. Some men treated their wives with genuine respect and affection despite the legal imbalance, but you have no way of knowing if Edward Blackwood would be such a husband. The courtship process is designed to reveal as little as possible about his true character. A week passes with several more carefully chaperoned interactions with Edward. A walk in the park with your mother 3 steps behind, tea at his family's home with Mrs. Blackwood watching like a hawk, a musical evening where you play the piano while he turns the pages, standing close enough that you can smell the brandy on his breath at 4 in the afternoon. Then it happens. Edward calls on your father at his club, not to see you, but to ask permission to propose, because you're not even involved in this most basic decision about your own life. Your father, of course, agrees enthusiastically. Edward Blackwood is a good match financially and socially. What more could matter? The proposal itself is painfully formal. Edward arrives at your home, asks to speak with you privately, with the drawing room door left open, and your mother hovering nearby, of course. He makes a stiff little speech about admiring your qualities and believing you would make a suitable wife. Not one word about love, not one word about happiness, just suitability. You know what your answer must be. In Victorian England, refusing a suitable proposal without an excellent reason would bring shame on your family. It could damage your reputation, making other potential suitors think something must be wrong with you. At 20, you're already pushing the boundaries of marriageable age. Your options are limited. Yes, Mr. Blackwood, I would be honoured. His smile doesn't reach his eyes. He takes your hand, places a perfunctory kiss on your knuckles, then immediately goes to share the news with your parents. You're left alone, engaged to a virtual stranger who now has the legal right to control every aspect of your existence. The weeks that follow are a whirlwind of wedding preparations. The date is set for just 2 months away, a relatively long engagement by Victorian standards. Some couples marry within weeks of meeting. Your trousseau is assembled, the clothes, linens and personal items you'll take to your new home. Your mother scrutinizes every stitch, every hem, every button. These items reflect on your family, after all. You're measured for your wedding dress, white, because Queen Victoria popularized the trend, though it's not yet universal. The corset for your wedding day arrives specially made. It's designed to achieve a 17-inch waist. When you try it on, you actually do faint. Just nerves, your mother dismisses when you regain consciousness. All brides get jittery. Marriage contracts are drawn up. Your father's lawyer and Edward's lawyer negotiate the details of your dowry, the money and goods that effectively serve as your purchase price. None of this involves you directly. You're just the commodity being transferred. With a single signature, you legally cease to exist as your own person. The wedding preparations continue relentlessly, but there's a new undercurrent in the household. Your mother has begun your preparation for married life. These awkward, veiled conversations dance around the topic of marital duties without ever mentioning sex directly. A wife must be accommodating to her husband's needs, she says stiffly one afternoon while supervising your embroidery. It may seem strange at first, but it is your duty before God. Translation: you'll be expected to submit to sex whether you want it or not. The physical aspect of marriage can be trying for refined women, she continues, staring fixedly at the wall above your head, but one endures for the blessing of children. Translation: you're not supposed to enjoy it. Just lie back and think of England. Mr. Blackwood seems a gentleman. I'm sure he will be considerate. Translation: maybe he won't hurt you too badly. These non-conversations leave you more terrified than informed. Victorian women are deliberately kept ignorant about their own bodies, about sex, about pregnancy and childbirth. Many go to their wedding nights having no idea what will happen. The results are often traumatic. Equally disturbing are the practical lessons: how to manage Edward's household, how to supervise his servants, how to anticipate his needs and wants without him having to voice them. You're being trained like a dog to respond to his moods. Men dislike coming home to domestic problems, your mother advises. Keep household matters to yourself unless he specifically asks. Never disturb him in his study without good reason. Always have a fresh shirt ready if he wishes to go out unexpectedly. Don't speak of illness or feminine complaints. Men find such topics distasteful. If he comes home in a temper, withdraw quietly until he calms. The subtext is clear. His comfort comes first. His moods dictate the household atmosphere. His needs supersede yours in every situation. You also receive subtle warnings about keeping his interest, hints that if you become boring, demanding, or too assertive, he might seek comfort elsewhere. Victorian men commonly keep mistresses or visit prostitutes, and while this behaviour isn't openly condoned, it's tacitly accepted as long as they maintain appearances. If your husband strays, it's considered your failure for not keeping him satisfied at home. 3 weeks before the wedding, you meet with Edward to discuss your new home, the only time you have any input into your future living situation. He shows you plans for his Grosvenor Square house, indicating which rooms will be yours, a bedroom separate from his, as is common in wealthy households, a small sitting room and a morning room for receiving female visitors. My study, library and smoking room are private, of course, he says, as if explaining to a child. I conduct business there and wouldn't want to bore you with such matters. Translation: large portions of what will supposedly be your home are actually off limits to you. He then outlines his expectations: breakfast at 8 sharp, dinner parties twice monthly, regular musical evenings to entertain his business associates, children within the first 2 years of marriage. Your role is clearly defined: hostess, decorative wife, and future mother, nothing more. Your opinion is not sought on any of this. Why would it be? You're just the woman who will live there. As the wedding approaches, you notice changes in how people treat you. Your mother is less critical. Her job is nearly done. Your father pays you slightly more attention, perhaps realizing his authority over you is almost finished. Edward becomes more possessive, his formerly formal demeanour occasionally slipping to reveal something harder underneath. At tea with both families, he corrects your opinion on a book. I think you've misunderstood the author's intent, my dear. Women often miss the deeper philosophical implications. When you play piano at his mother's house, he stands too close, turning pages and murmuring, "No, not like that. The tempo should be more restrained." During a chaperoned walk, he grips your arm too tightly when another gentleman smiles at you. I won't have my wife encouraging attentions from other men. Not yet your husband, but already controlling, already possessive, already showing the man he'll be when legal ownership is established. A week before the wedding, your married friend Charlotte visits. She's been married 2 years to a man much like Edward, wealthy, respectable, controlling. Behind closed doors, with your mother distracted by wedding details, she offers the only honest advice you've received. "It won't be what they tell you," she says quietly, glancing at the door to ensure privacy. "Some of it is worse, some better. You'll learn to navigate it." She shows you a bruise on her wrist, normally hidden by her sleeve. Thomas has certain expectations. When I fail to meet them, he reminds me of my place. Her eyes are dull, her formerly vibrant personality subdued. She's 23 but looks 40. This is what marriage has done to her. You can survive it, she tells you. We all do, one way or another. That night, you lie awake wondering what kind of survival Charlotte means. Physical survival? Probably. Emotional survival? Less certain. Are you just expected to endure decades of subjugation, of being a decorative possession with no rights, no autonomy, no escape? For the first time, you truly understand the courage of those suffragists your mother dismissed. Fighting for basic rights in a world that sees you as property isn't radical. It's necessary for survival. The bedroom door closes and you realize you have no right to refuse anything. You're a week away from legal non-existence, from becoming Mrs. Edward Blackwood, a woman with no independent identity, no legal rights, no control over her own body or future. And the worst part? By Victorian standards, you're lucky. Edward is wealthy, socially acceptable, and not hideously abusive, at least not yet. This is considered a good match. This is what success looks like for a Victorian woman. As you drift towards sleep, you wonder if your next awakening will be in your own time, your own world, with your legal personhood intact, or if you'll wake to your wedding day in 1860, the last day of your existence as Margaret Harrison, before you disappear into Edward Blackwood's legal shadow. Either way, you'll never take your rights for granted again. Morning comes again, but you're not in your own bed. The lumpy Victorian mattress confirms you're still trapped in 1860. With the wedding only days away, a creeping sense of panic sets in. This isn't just a strange dream, it's starting to feel like your new reality. But today brings an unexpected reprieve. Edward is called away on business, giving you a rare day without his scrutiny. Your mother, exhausted from wedding preparations, takes to her bed with nerves, leaving you with fewer immediate obligations. For the first time since arriving in this era, you have a moment to breathe, to think, to consider what options, if any, Victorian women actually have. Marriage is clearly the expected path, the only respectable path according to society. But what if a woman can't or won't marry? What then? You find yourself in your father's library, a room you're normally discouraged from lingering in. He's at his club, so you take the opportunity to browse his books. Books are stacked just out of reach, reserved for your brothers while you practice needlework. The volumes on law, politics, science, and classical literature are considered too taxing for the female mind. You pull down a volume on British law, curious about your impending legal non-existence as a married woman. The language is dense, but the message is clear. Upon marriage, you cease to exist as a separate legal entity. Your husband gains complete control over your property, your body, your children. Miss Margaret, what are you doing in here? You nearly drop the book as the housekeeper, Mrs. Wilson, appears in the doorway. Just looking for something to read, you stammer. Her expression softens slightly. Your father wouldn't approve of such heavy reading. Perhaps I could find you a nice novel from your mother's collection. Mrs. Wilson, you ask impulsively, what happens to women who don't marry? The question clearly surprises her, but she considers it thoughtfully. Well, miss, it depends on their circumstances. Gentlewomen with family money might live as companions or with relatives. Those less fortunate become governesses if they're educated enough. The rest, domestic service, factory work, or worse. Worse hangs in the air between you. You both know what it means. Prostitution, the fate of countless women with no other means of survival. Do you know any governesses, you ask? My niece, Ellen, is a governess for the Hendersons. It's a respectable position, but she hesitates. But what? It's a difficult life, miss. Neither family nor servant. Always alone. The pay is poor, the hours long, and if the master or his sons take liberties, there's little protection. Sexual harassment and assault, another unspoken reality for working women. With no legal recourse and their reputations constantly at risk, they're incredibly vulnerable. What about teaching? At a school? That requires education most women don't have access to, Mrs. Wilson says gently, unless your father sent you to a proper ladies' college, which few do. And there it is, the fundamental barrier. Education. Victorian girls, even in wealthy families, receive only the education deemed necessary for their predetermined role as wives and mothers. Basic literacy, perhaps some French or Italian, music, drawing and dance. Nothing that might prepare them for independence. Curious to learn more, you ask Mrs. Wilson about her niece's experiences. She's hesitant at first, but eventually shares Ellen's story. 7 years as a governess in 3 different households. The isolation, the exhaustion, the constant precarity of her position. One family dismissed her with no notice or reference when their son made advances and she refused him. Without a reference, finding new employment was nearly impossible. She was fortunate the Hendersons took her, Mrs. Wilson says. Many girls in her position end up elsewhere. Again, that weighted silence, the unspoken fate of women without means. You thank Mrs. Wilson and return the law book to its shelf, your mind racing. You've always known women face discrimination in the past, but experiencing these limitations firsthand, feeling the absolute powerlessness, is something else entirely. Later that afternoon, seeking fresh air, you convince Martha to accompany you on a walk, not to the genteel parks your mother prefers, but to the busy commercial streets where you might see working women. Your Victorian self would never suggest such an expedition, but your modern consciousness is desperate to understand the full spectrum of women's lives in this era. Martha is reluctant, but eventually agrees, clearly uncomfortable with this breach of propriety. We must be back before your mother wakes, miss, and we should avoid Oxford Street, not suitable for a young lady. Of course, Oxford Street is exactly where you want to go, where you might see women working in shops, offices and factories, but you compromise on a slightly less busy area where Martha feels less anxious. Even so, the glimpses you get are illuminating. Shop girls standing for 12, 14-hour shifts, not permitted to sit even when the store is empty. A milliner's workshop visible through a window, women hunched over intricate work in dim light, their fingers moving with mechanical precision. Through an open factory door, you catch a glimpse of the truth behind Victorian manufactured goods. Hundreds of women hunched over machines, losing fingers, breathing cotton dust that will kill them slowly. Young girls, no more than 12, their small hands better suited for delicate work, already showing signs of the physical deformities that come from hours in unnatural positions. The conditions are appalling. Dark, airless rooms crowded with workers, no safety measures for dangerous machinery, no breaks except a brief lunch, no toilet facilities. Women regularly soil themselves at their workstations rather than risk losing their jobs by leaving their posts. And the pay? A pittance. Barely enough to survive on and significantly less than men earn for similar work. "Look at that, miss," Martha whispers, nodding toward a small office where a woman sits at a desk apparently doing clerical work. A typewriter girl. They say it's respectable enough, but she trails off, clearly dubious. New technologies like the typewriter are creating a few opportunities for middle-class women, but these jobs come with their own problems. The woman you're observing looks exhausted, her back painfully curved from hours of hunching over the machine, and based on Martha's reaction, even this relatively clean, skilled work carries a social stigma. As you continue walking, you pass a hospital where you notice women in distinctive uniforms. Nurses, one of the few respectable professions recently opened to gentlewomen, thanks largely to Florence Nightingale's efforts during the Crimean War. But even nursing remains controversial in 1860, still fighting to be recognised as a proper profession rather than simple women's work. "My cousin tried to become a nurse," Martha says, following your gaze. "Her father forbade it, said no decent man would marry a woman who'd seen such things." Again, the double bind. Work means sacrificing marriage prospects, but without marriage, women need work to survive. Your walk takes you past a small schoolhouse where a tired-looking woman is dismissing a group of ragged children. A dame school, Martha explains. A small, informal school run by a woman with basic literacy but little formal education herself. The teaching is rudimentary, the pay minimal, the social status low. Returning home, you pass a group of women washing steps and scrubbing stoops, domestic servants doing the back-breaking outdoor work while their male counterparts handle the less physically demanding indoor tasks. Yet the men earn more, have more free time, and enjoy higher status in the household hierarchy. "Martha," you ask quietly, "if you weren't in service, what would you do?" She looks startled by the question. "Do, miss. What else could I do? I'm fortunate to have a position in a good household. But if you could choose anything, if you could be educated for any profession," she laughs, then covers her mouth, embarrassed by her own outburst. "Begging your pardon, miss, but that's like asking what I'd do if I could fly. It's not possible." "Humour me," you press gently. She thinks for a moment, her expression softening into something wistful. "I've always thought I might like to be a midwife. My grandmother was one. In our village, people respected her. She helped bring life into the world. Why didn't you? No money for training, miss. And my father wouldn't have allowed it. Said it wasn't decent work." Her expression closes again. "It doesn't matter anyway. Girls like me go into service. That's just how it is." "It shouldn't be," you murmur, half to yourself. Martha gives you a strange look. "You've been saying odd things lately, miss. Is it wedding nerves?" You manage a smile. "Perhaps. But it's more than that. It's the growing recognition of just how thoroughly women are trapped. Not just by laws and social customs, but by lack of education and economic opportunity. Without these, even legal rights mean little. Back at home, you're relieved to find your mother still resting and your absence unnoticed, but the expedition has left you with a profound sense of unease. The glimpses you've seen of working women's lives are disturbing, yet the alternative, complete dependence on a man who legally owns you, seems equally bleak. Is there no middle path, no way for a woman to maintain both dignity and independence? Later that evening, when your brother returns from university, you cautiously raise the subject of women's education. His response is predictably dismissive. "What would be the point?" He laughs. "Women's minds aren't suited to rigorous study. Medical science has proven it drains blood from the reproductive organs." You bite back a retort about this absurd pseudoscience. "But some women do attend college now," you say instead. "I've read about Bedford College in London." "Those blue-stocking types?" He makes a face. "No man wants to marry a woman who thinks she's his intellectual equal. It's unnatural." And there it is again. Everything circles back to marriage. A woman's education, if she receives any at all, is valued only insofar as it makes her a more appealing wife, accomplished enough to entertain guests, but not so knowledgeable she might challenge her husband. Your curiosity piqued, you find ways over the next few days to learn more about the limited educational opportunities available to women in 1860. What you discover is simultaneously depressing and inspiring. Formal education for girls remains rare and rudimentary. Most middle and upper class girls are either taught at home by governesses or sent to boarding schools that focus more on accomplishments than academics. Working class girls are lucky to receive any education at all. Many attend school only until age 10 or 11 before entering domestic service or factory work. Yet change is brewing. Pioneers like Emily Davies and Barbara Bodichon are advocating for women's higher education. Queen's College and Bedford College in London are offering more substantive education for women, though they can't yet grant degrees. The first medical school for women will open later in the decade. These educational reformers face vicious opposition. Critics claim higher education will make women infertile, insane, or masculine. Medical experts warn that the female brain can't handle intellectual exertion without damaging the reproductive system. Religious authorities cite biblical passages about women's proper subordinate role. Despite these barriers, a small but growing number of women are fighting for educational access, not just for personal fulfillment, but as a necessary step toward economic independence. Because without education, what can women do? The options in 1860 remain painfully limited. Domestic service, the largest employer of women, offering security but low pay, long hours, and constant supervision. Factory work, slightly better paid but physically dangerous and socially suspect. Needlework, respectable but brutally exploitative. Seamstresses often work 16-hour days for pennies, going blind from eye strain in the process. Teaching or governessing, the main options for educated middle-class women, offering respectability but isolation and vulnerability. Nursing, newly respectable thanks to Florence Nightingale, but still controversial and requiring training few women can access. Writing, a rare path for educated women with talent, though most publish anonymously or under male pseudonyms to be taken seriously. And for the truly desperate, prostitution, the fate of countless women with no other means of survival in a society that simultaneously creates and condemns them. The connection between education, employment, and independence becomes increasingly clear to you. Without education, most women can access only the lowest paid, most exploitative work. Without decent work, they remain economically dependent on men. Without economic independence, legal rights mean little in practice. It's a system perfectly designed to keep women subordinate, regardless of their individual talents or desires. Your pay envelope contains 1/3 what the men receive for identical work. This stark inequality isn't just unfair, it's deliberately engineered to keep women dependent on male support, either through marriage or family. A few days before the wedding, your mother finally feels well enough to resume wedding preparations. She finds you in your room, reading a newspaper article about a woman doctor in America. "Margaret, what are you doing with your father's newspaper?" You quickly fold it away. "Just passing the time, Mother." She sighs. "These unusual interests of yours. I hope marriage settles you. A woman with too active a mind often struggles with her proper duties." "Mother," you ask carefully, "did you ever want something different before you married Father?" The question clearly startles her. For a moment, something flickers in her eyes, a glimpse of the person she might have been in another life, with other choices. Then it's gone, replaced by her usual practical expression. What a peculiar question. What else would I've wanted? Marriage is a woman's natural state. But you notice she doesn't quite meet your eyes. Now, we must finalise the seating arrangements for the wedding breakfast. Mrs. Blackwood is most particular about not seating her cousin Eliza near the Hendersons after that unfortunate incident at the charity bazaar. And just like that, the moment passes. Whatever dreams your mother might once have harboured are long buried beneath years of conformity and compromise. That night, you lie awake thinking about the women you've encountered or learned about during your time in Victorian England, the factory workers slowly being poisoned by their working conditions, the governesses walking the narrow line between gentility and servitude, the prostitutes with no other options for survival, the rare pioneers fighting for education and professional opportunities despite overwhelming opposition. Each represents a different response to the same fundamental problem: how to survive in a world designed to keep women dependent and subordinate. Some conform and find what security they can within the system. Some rebel and face the harsh consequences. Most simply endure, finding small moments of agency within their constrained lives. As your wedding day approaches, you wonder which path you would choose if forced to remain in this era. Would you become the perfect Mrs. Blackwood, sublimating your own desires to survive within the system? Would you risk everything for independence, knowing the likely outcome is poverty and social death? Or would you find some middle path, outwardly conforming while nurturing a hidden self? There are no easy answers, no perfect choices, only the stark recognition that for women in 1860, every option involves significant sacrifice of freedom, security, reputation, or self-determination. Your modern perspective makes these limitations painfully clear. But for women born into this era, with no knowledge of other possibilities, the cage might not always be visible. They navigate the world as it is, finding meaning and purpose within the narrow spaces allowed them. As you drift towards sleep, you reflect that surviving as a Victorian woman requires a particular kind of strength, not the freedom to pursue your dreams, but the resilience to endure their deferral or denial, to find purpose within constraint, to build a life in the spaces between other people's expectations. It's a different kind of courage than what's celebrated in your time, not the courage to break barriers, but the courage to live meaningfully despite them. Tomorrow brings your wedding day, and perhaps a return to your own era. Either way, you'll carry with you a deeper understanding of these women's lives, their struggles, and their quiet, persistent strength. Your wedding day dawns grey and misty, London fog seeping through the window cracks like ghostly fingers. Martha wakes you earlier than usual. There's so much to do before the 11 o'clock ceremony at St. George's Church. "Today's the day, miss," she says, her voice a mix of excitement and something else. Sadness, perhaps? You've grown close during your time in this strange Victorian life. After today, she'll remain here while you become Mrs. Edward Blackwood, moving to a different household, with different servants. "Yes, Martha, today's the day." The morning passes in a blur of preparations, the special wedding corset laced to a brutal 17 inches, the elaborate hair arrangement that takes over an hour to perfect, the white wedding dress with so many layers of petticoats you can barely move, the veil, the gloves, the tiny satin shoes that pinch your feet. By the time you're fully dressed, you can hardly breathe, not just from the corset, from the crushing reality of what this day represents, the end of your legal existence, the beginning of a life in someone else's shadow. "You look beautiful, miss," Martha whispers, adjusting your veil one last time. Your mother bustles in, already dressed in her finest gown. "Oh, Margaret!" she exclaims, her eyes filling with tears. "You're perfect. Mr. Blackwood will be so pleased." That's the goal, isn't it? Pleasing the man who's about to own you, not your happiness or fulfillment, his satisfaction with his purchase. The church is packed with people you barely know, distant relatives, business associates of your father and Edward, society people whose approval your mother desperately craves. None of them care about your feelings. This is a social and economic transaction dressed up with flowers and hymns. Edward waits at the altar, looking satisfied rather than joyful. When you reach him, he barely glances at your face, his eyes sweeping over you in that same assessing way he's always looked at you, checking that the goods are in acceptable condition. The ceremony itself is mercifully brief. The vows, love, honor, obey, stick in your throat, but you say them anyway. What choice do you have? The ring slides onto your finger, heavy and cold. A shackle, not a symbol of love. And then it's done. You're Mrs. Edward Blackwood, no longer a legal person in your own right. The wedding breakfast afterward is an elaborate affair at your parents' home. You sit beside Edward, picking at food you're too tense to eat, accepting congratulations from people whose names you barely remember. Everyone smiles. Everyone pretends this is a joyous occasion. No one acknowledges the reality that you've just been transferred from one man's ownership to another's. As the reception winds down, you notice Martha slipping through the crowd with your travelling case. It's almost time to leave with Edward for your wedding trip, a week at his family's country estate. The anxiety that's been building all day spikes sharply. Tonight is your wedding night, the night when Edward will claim his marital rights, whether you want him to or not. You excuse yourself to change into your travelling outfit, desperate for a moment alone. In your bedroom, no longer yours after today, Martha helps you out of your wedding dress and into a fashionable travelling suit of dark blue wool. Mrs. Blackwood, Martha says hesitantly. I've put something in your case, under the nightdresses. It's just, my mother taught me, for new brides. You look at her questioningly. A small bottle of oil, she whispers, blushing furiously. It can make things easier the first time. Your throat tightens with unexpected emotion. This small act of female solidarity, practical, unspoken knowledge passed from woman to help navigate a system that leaves them vulnerable, moves you deeply. Thank you, Martha. You impulsively embrace her, breaking all rules of proper mistress-servant behaviour. After a startled moment, she hugs you back. Be well, miss, she whispers. Be safe. You descend the stairs to where Edward waits, impatient to depart. Your parents and guests line the hallway to see you off. Your mother kisses your cheek, whispering last-minute advice about being a good wife. Your father shakes Edward's hand, the men exchanging knowing looks that make your skin crawl. And then you're in Edward's carriage, pulling away from the only home you've known in this Victorian life, heading toward an uncertain future as Mrs. Blackwood. The journey to the country estate takes several hours. Edward spends most of it discussing his business affairs, neither asking your opinion nor showing interest in your thoughts. You gaze out the window at the passing landscape, watching London's crowded streets give way to suburbs and eventually rural countryside. By the time you arrive, darkness has fallen. The Blackwood estate looms against the night sky, a grand but sombre silhouette. Servants emerge to welcome the new master and his bride, lining up with perfect precision as you step down from the carriage. Edward's housekeeper, Mrs. Foster, shows you to your rooms, separate but adjoining bedchambers for husband and wife. As is common in wealthy households, your belongings have been unpacked, your nightclothes laid out. The bed, enormous and draped with heavy curtains, dominates the room. You stare at it, unable to escape thoughts of what will happen there tonight. I'll send my lady's maid to help you prepare for bed, Edward says from the doorway. I'll join you in an hour. Not a request, a statement of fact. His tone makes it clear this is non-negotiable. His lady's maid, Ellen, is efficient but cold as she helps you undress and brush out your hair. She makes no effort at conversation, and you wonder if she resents having a new mistress to serve, or if she's always this detached. Either way, her silent presence only increases your anxiety. When she leaves, you sit at the dressing table in your nightgown, staring at your reflection. You barely recognize yourself, pale from months of arsenic and limited sun exposure, thin from restricted food, dark circles under your eyes from constant corset-induced oxygen deprivation. Is this really you? Or have you become someone else entirely during your time in Victorian England? The connecting door opens without a knock. Edward enters wearing a dressing gown over his nightshirt. His expression is unreadable as he approaches. "Wife," he says, and the word sounds like ownership. What follows is everything your mother's veiled warnings suggested. Clinical, impersonal, painful. Edward takes what he considers his right, with no concern for your comfort or pleasure. You endure, remembering Martha's whispered advice to new brides throughout the ages. Just get through it. When it's over, he returns to his own room without a word of affection. You lie awake in the massive bed, tears silently tracking down your temples into your hair. Is this to be your life now? Decades of this emptiness, this use of your body as an object for someone else's satisfaction? You must have eventually fallen asleep because the next thing you know, sunlight is streaming through a gap in the curtains. For a moment, you're disoriented. This isn't your bedroom at home. It isn't your Victorian parents' house either. Then you realise you're back. Back in your own bed, your own time. The Victorian nightmare is over. You sit up, gasping with relief, running your hands over your uncorseted ribs, your body that belongs to you alone. The clock on your nightstand shows the date. You've returned to exactly when you left, as if no time has passed at all, but something has changed. You have changed. The experience may have been a dream, a hallucination, or something else entirely, but the knowledge you gained feels viscerally real. You spend the day in a daze, marveling at freedoms you previously took for granted, the ability to leave your home unaccompanied, to wear comfortable clothes that don't restrict your breathing, to speak your mind without fear of social ruin, to control your own money, to exist as a legal person in your own right. That evening, unable to shake thoughts of Victorian women and their limited lives, you find yourself researching the era more deeply, not the sanitized costume drama version, but the harsh realities of women's legal status, health challenges, and social constraints. You learn about the women who fought to change those realities. Emmeline Pankhurst and the suffragettes who were force-fed in prison for demanding voting rights. Elizabeth Garrett Anderson, who became Britain's first female doctor despite being barred from medical school. Josephine Butler, who campaigned against the sexual double standard. Countless unnamed women who endured, survived, and slowly pushed for change in ways big and small. Behind closed doors, you finally collapse, bone-tired from performing perfection all day. The Victorian woman's life was a constant performance, physically demanding, emotionally draining, intellectually stifling. Even the wealthiest women paid a steep price for their gilded cages. As night falls, you find yourself unexpectedly emotional. Your brief experience as Margaret Harrison has left you with a profound connection to the women of that era, not just the famous few who defied conventions, but the millions who simply survived them. Women who navigated impossible constraints with whatever tools they had available. Women whose small acts of resistance or solidarity often went unrecorded but still mattered. You think about Martha and her secret gift of oil to ease your wedding night, about Charlotte showing you her bruises as a warning, about Mrs. Wilson sharing her niece's story to educate you, women helping women navigate a system designed to isolate and control them. You think about your Victorian mother with her glimpse of something like regret when you asked if she'd wanted something different from life, about the factory women enduring dangerous conditions for meagre pay because the alternatives were worse, about the match-selling child with phossy jaw, visible evidence of a system that used up human bodies without care. These women weren't just passive victims of their time. They were active survivors making calculated choices with the limited options available to them, finding agency where they could, building networks of support, passing down practical knowledge, creating meaning within constraint. As you lie in bed, the comfort of your modern mattress feels like a luxury beyond measure. No arsenic wallpaper, no coal smoke filtering through poorly sealed windows, no corset digging into your ribs even as you sleep. Just the simple freedom to breathe deeply, to move comfortably, to exist in a body that legally belongs to you alone. The true horror of the Victorian era for women wasn't just the obvious dangers, the toxic beauty products, the restrictive clothing, the lethal childbirth practices. It was the suffocating limitation of potential. Millions of women who might have been scientists, artists, leaders, or innovators instead channeled their intelligence and creativity into the narrow outlets permitted them. What human potential was lost to these constraints? What contributions never made? What joy never experienced? You think about the women still facing similar constraints around the world today, those still fighting for basic rights, education, and autonomy, those whose freedom to control their own bodies and lives remains contested. The work begun by Victorian reformers continues, unfinished. As you lie in bed, wondering if tomorrow will be your last day of this Victorian life, your eyes grow heavy. You're exhausted, not just physically, but emotionally. Your brief time as Margaret Harrison has given you a perspective you never had before, a visceral understanding of how far women have come and how recently. The ordinary freedoms of your daily life, education, legal personhood, bodily autonomy, career opportunities, aren't ordinary at all. They're the result of generations of women fighting, surviving, and gradually expanding what's possible. Rights you take for granted would have seemed utopian to Margaret Harrison and her contemporaries. As sleep begins to claim you, you make a silent promise to the Victorian women whose lives you briefly shared to never take these hard-won freedoms for granted, to recognize the shoulders you stand on, to continue the work they began. Your modern bed cradles you as consciousness fades. Unlike your Victorian counterpart, you can sleep deeply without fear of toxic wallpaper, of legal non-existence, of a future determined entirely by others. Your dreams belong to you. Your body belongs to you. Your life belongs to you. This simple fact that you own yourself would have been revolutionary to Victorian women, a dangerous, radical notion that threatened the entire social order, yet here you are, the beneficiary of their dangerous dreams. As you drift towards sleep, you carry with you a new appreciation for these women's quiet strength. Not just the famous rebels and reformers, but the millions who simply endured, who found dignity and meaning within crushing constraints, who passed down their practical wisdom woman to woman, who kept their humanity in a system designed to deny it. Their legacy lives in your freedom, in your education, your career options, your legal rights, your control over your own body, in all the choices big and small that they couldn't make but you can. Sleep comes easily in your safe, comfortable bed. As consciousness fades, you're grateful, not just for your modern privileges, but for the brief, difficult gift of understanding what life was like without them, for the connection to women across time who navigated impossible choices with courage, ingenuity, and quiet persistence. This understanding will stay with you, deepening your appreciation for freedoms easily taken for granted. The freedom to vote, to work, to own property, to control your reproduction, to exist legally as yourself. The freedom to breathe unrestricted, both literally and metaphorically. As you finally surrender to sleep, you carry with you the voices of Victorian women, their struggles, their survival strategies, their small rebellions and private hopes. Their stories merge with dreams, a reminder of how recently the past lives, how hard-won the present is, how unfinished the future remains. And with that, close your eyes and drift off to sleep.